Hi all. Today I just want to share with you the history that we have learned so far. Maybe we look at the history with a different view. I mean, 180-degree, completely different way. Because there are many things that are not clearly explained in detail about the life and death of Jesus Christ, especially his trial. So, and then all the history that following the after the death of Jesus is something that is quite contrary to the teachings of Jesus. So, I want to reiterate what exactly happened. I mean, the best guess that myself. So I think some of you might agree with this one because the knowledge that the understanding that we had is not according to the biblical truth. Um, yeah, it is true that Jesus was a real figure. He lived in on the planet Earth, and he died 2,000 years ago to he to save his people from their sins. That is what we understand. Yes, so as we know very well that after Jesus' death, that the Christianity spread quite rapidly from Jerusalem to Judea and then all Rome's and all to all the earth. It spread it quite remarkably. The when Jesus first was dead, the after Jesus' death, and then the chaos that followed after Jesus' resurrection, and the Pilate, the governor of Judea at that time, uh, who was a judge at the time of Jesus' death sentence, was quite well aware from their staff, from their secretaries, all the reports that he got from this man, and then his resurrection, and then all the stories that made really him perplexed and disturbed. And in his report after that to Emperor Tiberius, he mentioned this short uh, verses, and I'm going to read it for you because this is very important in understanding why I am saying this. The church history, briefly, as you understand, after hundreds years of persecution, Rome finally approved the Christianity as their national religion by Emperor Constantine about 350 AD. And then after following 1,000 years, the church really passed through dark ages. And during that time, the Western world was dominated by this Christianity religion. And after that, there arose a Protestant, because of this, like the Christianity Pope and all his people's blasphemies. The people were no longer able to stand that, and the quick spread of the printing technology and the Bible translation of Bible into their modern day English all made is impossible, because many people were awakened and then they rose to this absurd teachings of Catholicism. And after that, there arose the Protestant hero like Martin Luther and John Calvin. And these two figures represent the Reformation era, and after that, Christianity also divided into two, like one Catholicism and the other Protestants. And the Protestants also, after that, spending many hundred years, and became like Christianity today. The the history that we learned is that the Constantine became Christian, and he approved Christianity as a Roman national religion. This idea really doesn't make sense, because if that was done by the direct intervention of the Holy Spirit, because then the following 1,000 years should have been a real Christian, the world. But what happened is exactly the opposite. All their blasphemies, all their dealings with the people, all is 100% unchristian. So that does not justify that the emperor became Christian, because there must be some conspiracy involved. The emperor Constantine has to accept, because finally, after hundreds of years of Christianity, the Roman Empire was dominated by 50% Christians. So the emperor should do something, because their persecution is no longer working in his control of the world. So he chose the other option, that accepting Christian people into their system. So the ostensibly looks like it's Christian world, but inside is 100% unchristian. That is why the fruits we have they have produced is showing what type of a tree it was actually. That is the word of Jesus. The fruit itself will prove the type of a tree that it is. So in the beginning of the early stages of Christianity, there is I'm going to read one verse from the letter, the report to Emperor Tiberius from Pilate, who gave death sentence to Jesus. This will show you why the Roman emperors, were so much trying to root out, to exterminate Christianity on the face of the world, because the Pilate himself prophesied that Rome will be terminated. Rome will be, no longer existing because of this religion of Jesus. That is Pilate's concern and prophecy in his report to Emperor Tiberius. I'm going to read this one. So the following, the emperors and their policy makers maybe must have read this letter from Pilate, trying to find out what Christianity was, and then this prophecy of Pilate made them fear very much. So they just wanted to exterminate Christianity to the best of their power. Okay, he said in Pilate, he said to the emperor on his letter, it was on account of his sayings, Jesus' sayings, that I granted so much liberty to the Nazarene, for it was in my power to have him arrested and exiled to Pontus. But that would have been contrary to the justice which has always characterized the Roman government in all its dealings with men. This man was neither seditious nor rebellious. I extended to him my protection, unknown perhaps to himself. He was at liberty to act, to speak, to assemble and address the people, and to choose the disciples, unrestrained by any praetorian mandate. Should it ever happen, may the gods avert the omen. Should it ever happen, now he is prophesying, I say that the religion of our forefathers will be supplanted by the religion of Jesus. It will be to this noble toleration that Rome shall owe her premature death, while I, miserable wretch, will have been the instrument of what the Jews call providence and we call destiny. As we know, the judge Pilate he just admired Jesus Christ for his wonderful teachings personally, and he liked, but because of this fear of sedition and then the uncooperation of Jesus Christ to release him made him have no choice but giving death verdict on that day. And then the following reports about his resurrection, all the chaos that happened, Pilate in his because he knew that Jesus was not normal person, and he finally concluded that Rome will have her premature death. Rome will finish soon by this religion of Jesus. That is his prophecy. I mean, so if anybody who is reading this report from Pilate, if it is emperor or emperor's policymakers, they will definitely decide to, because it's dangerous, we have to get rid of this Christianity completely, otherwise Rome will have a premature death. That is why Roman emperors are so much, it's like a North Korean leader Kim is trying to terminate Christianity in his kingdom. So that is their plan. So that's why we have hundreds of years of persecution for a long, long time. But that didn't work out. When they persecuted, hundreds more sprang up. So their policy actually didn't work out. So they may have to choose other ways. Like we have to accept them in our system. So they organized, they planned for a long time, and then they just ostensibly accepting Christianity as their national religion. But it's not a teachings of Jesus at all, because if it was the teachings of Jesus, why would the following 1,000 years we have to go such a dark ages? So it is completely opposite to the teachings of Jesus Christ. That means that because the emperor has no choice but to accept Christianity as their religion, and then they just they just gathered the scholars, and then they made some doctrines which is absurd, and then they make they just deprive the words of God from normal people. They made their system go in a long, long time without any problem in the following 1,000 years. But now, because their blasphemy went to the limit, went to the sky, and then the people were no longer accepting their, and then they were able to read the Bible because of the printing technology. There arose a Christianity movement, revival, and then the Pope was aware of this movement, and they also had to do something. So they persecuted many Christian scholars who were trying to translate the Bible, and they just William Tyndale, he was hunted down to the Netherlands and was taken to England, and he was burned to death there. At that time, so it's very hard to resist the powerful Roman Catholic at that time. But many people believe that the Pope was wrong, and then the Word of God is the real truth. And so they all came to this revival, and the movement was so great. So the Pope should do something. And because with these people, with this revival of Christian people, Pope was not able to control his kingdom. So he wanted to kill so many people, so many opponents, so many Protestants that is rising against his power. So he picked up some people. I think that's the Martin Luther, and then the John Calvin were used by them, and then during those years many Christians were killed by this Roman the Pope's armies, like Jesuit armies. As we know through history, about 50 million Christians were exterminated by their power during this time. But the Martin Luther and John Calvin, they lived a long life. The World War II Nazi war criminals, they just said that they are not guilty because our leader, the Christian leader Martin Luther, authorized them to kill 6 million Jews. Their excuse is that Martin Luther approved their, because Martin Luther is the Christian leader. But how come the Nazi criminals quote Martin Luther as their, teacher? How can Martin Luther can be regarded as a hero for those criminals? There's something wrong with this one, I think, because Jesus told us that the fruits will prove the trees. If those Nazi criminals are the fruits of Martin Luther, how could that be the pioneer of Christian history? Whether he wanted or he was used as the instrument for Pope's army, but anyway, as a result, many 50 million Christians had to die during that time. So what I'm saying is that he was used as like a hand-picked, because to make something happen, you just invent another, the opposition is opposition controlled by himself, and then he just he just wants what he used. This Calvin also, because Calvin killed 1/3 of his country, Switzerland, but that is also completely contrary to the teachings of Jesus, because Jesus said that do not do to others if you are not to be treated like that. So what that means, that I don't want somebody to kill me because I have a different view about doctrine. But what John Calvin did is he killed 1/3 of his countrymen because of this difference of doctrine. His doctrine is not aside from whether his doctrine was right or not. The fruit that he produced is completely showing what type of tree he was. So what I'm saying, the real martyrs, real pioneers were all persecuted, were all burned to death, were all killed by the Roman power, the Pope's power. But how come these people live a long life without any fear? So there is some opposition, there is a real opposition, there is a controlled opposition. So I believe that the Martin Luther and John Calvin were controlled opposition by this Pope's army. But all the other martyrs who really devoted their lives and were actually killed by this Pope's army, they are the real Christian reformists, and they are Protestants. But through history, we believe that these two controlled opposition, the Martin Luther and then John Calvin, are the pioneers of the Protestant faith. But that is not true. You see, because Martin Luther had a great impact on the Christianity, modern world Christianity, and then some decisions that was made. But at this time, after this Martin Luther, he just organized the Bibles, and some Bibles that is very important in Christian life, he omitted himself, and then so those things that he did because he is the pioneer of Christianity. But come to think of it, it's all controlled because he just deleted the actual the words of God that was read many times by early Christians. But those stuffs, if those books were present and then the Christians are reading those books even today, then all those stupidities that's going on nowadays would have no room, no place in our churches. But because of what he did, they were able to do all this message around the world, like homosexuality or the earth moving and all that stuff. And after Martin Luther, there arose in the scientific world a strange idea that so far we have known that the sun is rising from the east and then sets to the west, but strange idea came out from Galileo saying that the sun is there and then the earth is moving, and then ostensibly Galileo was persecuted by the church at that time, but that is all the painted story, I believe. And the before we had no problem with God because God, is so powerful in man's life. So God all the time, we people had no problem, but they started to to fabricate the story 180-degree different way. So now the sun is no longer moving. Now the earth is moving, and the earth, because earth is moving, we needed some theory proving that the water underneath is like should not fall. It should be by some scientific principle. Like that is called a law of gravity, and they needed scientists like Newton and Einstein to make all formulas and all that stuff to make it possible. Also the Einstein, the best, the guy scientist with the best IQ. But those people they needed. But actually, God is God of science. So if they study real science, but the science that they are studying is all like a pseudo-science, what we call the science in their imagination. They do not go to lab to study and to experience, but what they do is all like imagination stuff. And so the old Bible stories has become like a absurd story. The Joshua stopped the sun in the middle of a day, but how could the sun stop? If the sun stops, that means that the earth is not moving. Then how do you explain that fast moving 1,000 kilometers per hour, fast moving earth stop suddenly, and then the moving the velocity will stop, and then the water 1,000 kilometers water flowing and stops, and then it means that whole water will so it's a whole process make the Bible is a book of nonsense. So they made they did not get rid of the Bible, but they made the Bible as a book having no sense, no science, and all that. So they needed some, because of this, to make this theory possible, they have to make this, they invent a law of gravity. This law of gravity is actually completely opposite to the law of physics. The heavy material force, that is completely, it's not a science. Law of gravity is not a science, because it is completely against the science. And then they also start teaching children that man came not from from Adam and Eve. Man came from dust, and men are here by accident, and then the monkeys evolved, and then it became humans. For thousands of years, millions of years time. If for millions of years time, nobody will be able to trace back and prove it. No problem. So that is their intention. That is why we have now here all these sciences. But the actual sciences like electrical engineering, mechanical engineering, or medical engineering, all that stuff are very important in the eyes of God, because God is God of science. But these pseudosciences is really made everything crooked. And the most wonderful thing they did is that wonderful job is that they just deprived the Bible, deprived the modern day children of God. So the modern day children became godless, and they are godless generation now than any other generation in the history of mankind, in the name of science. And then they don't believe God anymore, because the science that they learned, and then the history they learned, is completely opposite. So they are the people who are in control of the public education system. So they just organize this way everything. We call them the liar. They are not lying to individuals. They are not lying to the nations. They are not lying to some group of people. They are lying to the whole world. Bible tells Satan as the deceiver of the world. So Satan organized all this one, not for 100 years, for thousands of years. He was planning this, trying to deceive people, trying to get rid of them of their God, and so that they can take them when their final day is approaching. So this is the story. I mean, there's all the story that great heroes of Christianity, and Martin Luther and John Calvin, they are controlled opposition by Pope's power. And then Constantine he is not a Christian. He had to approve Christianity to use as their political purpose of let them go in their war against their purpose. And then all this stuff is therefore I think it is important to understand why the current day the Christianity is so much powerless, because we have gotten rid of the power of the Bible, because they all get it of through their trickery of seducing people. I mean the deviating or misguiding people from the truth of the Bible. So nobody believes the Bible these days. So this is the current situation now. So then this godless generation really produces a lot of products in their lives the history has never seen. Yep. So that's it. So Constantine never became Christian. He just used Christianity to keep his kingdom last forever. And the Martin Luther and John Calvin was controlled opposition. They are not the heroes of Christianity. Heroes of Christianity all dead. They were burned to death. When they fled away, but this controlled opposition, when they defiantly opposed Pope, but their life never was in danger. They just lived a long life. They ate good. So that shows that and then what they did is the important books like a book of Enoch in Bible. He just get rid of, because in the book of Enoch completely shows that the sun is circling around the circuits of 6 portals. It's very clear. So no light can ever And then in the book of Enoch, and then the book of the Gospel of Nicodemus, they clearly shows that the homosexuality in Christian world is absurd, because if those books were present with us, those stupid thinkings would have found no place in Christian world today. So anyway, we are living in a world of deception, so we need to be very careful. And then, so the truth that we need to is the word of God. But it is God's, I think, providence that we still have this Bible. But because those Bible is still, it's good to let us understand what God really wants in our lives, to believe in Jesus. So we just had a chance to think 100%, 180 degree different way about the history that we have learned. So, well, you might have a different idea and thinking, but that is my understanding, because the fruits that we have seen is definitely show what type of tree are we grafted in. So the tree that we have to be grafted is in Jesus Christ, and His word is true, and His God the Father that we believe is the creator of all the universe, and we have not come from dust. We actually come from dust, yes, but the dust cannot evolve itself, because there is the power, the supernatural power of God made all this dust become lives. So that's the difference that we are. So it's important that not noting anything. This one, we might be easily brainwashed. I think we should be very careful about this one. Thank you very much for listening. Thank you.